MacVoices is sponsored by lynda.com. Expand your skills. Improve yourself. Get a free 10-day trial of all lynda.com has to offer at lynda.com/MacVoices. Welcome back to MacNotables on MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac Community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, for the first time in 2015, Mr. Ted Landau. Ted, Happy New Year. It's great to see you.
Happy New Year to you.
Yes, Happy New Year to everybody.
That's right. I'm glad you're back from CES, where I saw all your tweets for the past week or two.
Yeah, still, as we record this, I've still got some stuff to get out, but had a good time and came back healthy for a change. It was sort of nice.
That's an exception.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But I got the flu a little bit over the holidays, so I think maybe the antibiotics I took before I went helped insulate me.
Cool.
Yeah. So what's exciting in your world over the holidays? Anything?
Really not much. It's been pretty quiet. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, not much going on.
That's good. That's good. Well, I thought a couple things that have been on my mind, and I wanted to get us back into the swing of things. One, Ted, is not directly related to any particular thing, but it's the idea that we still see so many articles out there. If Apple makes the slightest misstep, and I don't mean a big misstep, or if somebody even thinks they're going to make a misstep, we're back to that whole Apple is doomed thing. And it just, I don't know, it just makes me a little crazy because first of all, it's clearly link bait. And second, it's the worst kind of link bait because it just has no basis in fact, especially with Apple's cash hoard and the position that Apple holds. Something just absolutely amazing would have to happen for it to be in any serious trouble for the foreseeable future.
Well, I absolutely agree. There's no sense that Apple is doomed. There's no way Apple is doomed. It's just a ridiculous idea for the near future. Look, any company can be doomed. Who would have predicted that BlackBerry would be where it is today several years ago before the iPhone came out? Who would have predicted that Microsoft, which clearly still isn't doomed, Microsoft really is a good example of how Apple isn't doomed. Look at the trouble Microsoft has had with declining sales of PC shipments and losing out on the mobile market by and large, and yet they're still a viable company. No one is saying that Microsoft is doomed, at least not for the foreseeable future. So yeah, companies can have big downturns, and there's no reason that Apple could not have a big downturn coming up as well. But that's not the same thing as saying Apple is doomed. Personally, I don't think Apple's going to have a big downturn. I think Apple's doing quite well, and if I had to predict, I'd say over the next 2 or 3 years, Apple will be in an even better position at the end of those 3 years than they are today. I think they're doing quite well, and Tim Cook seems to have a good sense of how to navigate the waters, and I expect things to continue to go well. But even if that were not the case, they're not doomed. I don't know where those ideas come from, other than, as you say, to be link bait, and the best people can do is just not click.
Apple absolutely has to produce an Apple television, or they're doomed. You know, Apple absolutely has to make this size phone or that size phone, or they're doomed. And yet the iPhones continue to sell hand over fist. The Apple TV, you know, there's some questions over whether that is the best streaming device out there right now. It's certainly, if you're an Apple user, I think it's definitely one of the best. I won't get into the debate over whether it's the best Netflix device or YouTube device or, you know, any of the other streaming services, because I don't consume that many of the streaming services. But at the very least, it's still a very viable box. And with screen mirroring from your Mac or from your iDevice, there's an awful lot of versatility on what you can put up on the Apple TV.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just getting into a Twitter discussion of this. I use AirPlay all the time, actually. It was really cool. The other week we had a friend come over who was talking about how there was this website where they were live streaming a concert that's big here, Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, and you could, and if you weren't able to attend, you could stream it, and they still show the streams on an archival basis. And she wanted to be able to see them on her TV, and she has an iPhone. And I said, with your iPhone. And they had an Apple TV. They have an Apple TV and an iPhone. I said, with your iPhone and the Apple TV, you can just get it on your iPhone and show it on your TV. And she said, what? And she had no idea she could do this. And so I just showed it to her. And in less than a minute, her iPhone was showing the videos on the TV in pretty good definition too. I mean, and so that was impressive. And then of course Naomi, my wife, the other day decided she wanted to start watching The Good Wife after hearing about it for so long. We've never watched that show, and it's not available in Netflix, but it is available on Amazon Prime, which we have. And unfortunately, Apple TV doesn't have Amazon as a TV as a channel yet, but I could get it through AirPlay. And again, it was very, very serviceable. It's not, you didn't have to use mirroring, because a lot of these TV channels like Amazon Prime, once you actually engage the TV show, it takes over so that you get the full screen effect and the high definition effect rather than just the simple mirroring. And so it's almost as good as if you actually have the channel. So yeah, I mean, it works very well, and I really like AirPlay, and of course like having access to my iTunes library as well, and being able to play music wherever I have an Apple TV. Yeah, it's great. Plus all the channels. To be honest with you, I use like almost none of the channels. They keep adding more and more channels, and that essentially means there are more and more channels that I won't use. I use Netflix and HBO Go, and maybe one or two others from time to time, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't use a lot of those channels, but I think it's great because it's sort of exactly what the Apple TV should be. They're niche channel. Well, a lot of them are niche channels, not ABC, NBC, CBS, but a lot of niche channels. But they deliver the content that those particular audiences want, and I still think it's one of the best cord cutting devices. Or a friend of mine got one over the holidays, and she and her family just they love it because they spent the holidays watching content off the Apple TV, and suddenly they're thinking about knocking of quite a bit of their cable bill down because they just don't feel like they need it now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't even know what some of those channels are, the niche channels, as you're saying. Sometimes I just open one just to see what it is, and sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's not. But I guess you must have to know about them from some other way, unless you're just in an exploratory mode. But I will say, in terms of you were mentioning the CBS and the ABC channels, I have given up on those because of the commercials. I'm very much not into watching commercials anymore, and with one of the downsides of watching all these shows on the app channels or the web-based channels, however you decide to watch it, is that not only do they have commercials as they would on regular TV, but you can't zip through them. Like if you record a show on your DVR, as I'm sure you're aware, when it gets to the commercials, you can just press that fast forward button and you're zipping through the commercials, or the skip button, even better. With these web-based and app-based shows, they force you to watch the commercials. And in some ways, I'm sure they think this is kind of nice. They're getting people to watch commercials that otherwise wouldn't have watched them because they'd skip through them. And that was okay with me at first, when the commercials were like 30 seconds at most before you were back to the show. But now, in fact, this issue of The Good Wife was an example. I took a look at watching The Good Wife on the CBS channel just to see what that was like, and it got to the first commercial break, and it was like 3 minutes of commercials. And I thought, well, forget that. There's no way. And that's just one commercial break. I mean, it was going to be like 20 minutes of commercials before we were done, it seemed. 15 to 20 minutes commercials for sure. That's just as bad as watching it on television. So that's just not an option for me. I suppose it could be an option for people that don't care as much about watching commercials. I suppose it won't matter, but I'm not going there anymore.
I wonder what's going to happen. One of the things that came out of CES, one of the few announcements that I think has a lot of interest for a very, very, very broad group of people, was this package that you're going to be able to buy for $20 that has streaming. Streaming ESPN. I'm sorry, I didn't memorize all the channels, but in essence, they're not a lot of questionable channels. There's some pretty decent channels in there. Notably,
is that the Sling TV thing that you're talking about?
Yeah. Thank you. Especially, everybody has issues over ESPN and sports. Now you're going to have some of that. And that seemed like one of the first major breakthroughs. We've seen some little minor ones. And I just wonder if these networks are going to be smart enough to say, hey, you know what? We're cutting out some of the middlemen here. maybe we don't need to sell quite as many commercials, or maybe we can figure out some other way to charge a little bit differently and not have any commercials. I don't know. I feel like they're kind of killing the golden goose by just, I mean, what is network TV now? About 42 minutes of programming in an hour?
On prime time, yeah, it could be up to 45 maybe, but that's about it. You get somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes of commercials every hour, and that's in the evening. During the daytime, soap operas and stuff like that, it's even worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. We seem to talk about this a lot. There's, and I'll make reference to CES a number of times here, but there remains a huge amount of interest in cord cutting and of finding alternative ways to get the programs you want, and only the programs you want, and not constantly be burdened with paying for things that you're not interested in.
Yeah, well, I think within 5 years, I think the major way that people watch television, the majority of people will watch television, will be through an internet connection. And I think cable TV is going to, Comcast is okay. Cable TV is going to have to adjust, but I don't think it's any big deal for Comcast, because Comcast is also an internet provider. So they're very well positioned. If everybody suddenly said, we're giving up our cable, we're cutting our cable cord, we're going to watch everything over the internet, in some sense, I know it wouldn't be Comcast's first choice, but in some sense, Comcast could say, oh, who cares? Now you'll just have to pay for the pipes to get all that stuff in over the internet, and we're going to charge you more than we were before. So I think it's a win-win ultimately for companies like Comcast, no matter what. But I think it will ultimately mean more choice for less money, with less commercials, if it's handled well, for the consumer. So I think it'll be a good thing. And much more on-demand viewing. I mean, the idea of being tied to watch something when it's broadcast on television, that's already pretty much dead, and it's going to be completely dead soon.
And I keep trying to decide whether it's just the geeks that we are, we're into the technical part. We have the ability to figure out how to do a lot of this stuff. I wonder if we still are in the vast minority, that a lot of people are just, they want to come home, hit the couch, pick up the remote, and turn on the TV and see what's on. It seems like I hear more and more normal people, which I don't know what that makes us, but more and more normal people, what?
Super normal.
Yeah, thank you. I like that. More and more of the normal people kind of complaining about the fact that Comcast is constantly trying to say, I want to bundle a phone plan, and I want to bundle an internet plan, and I want you to increase the TV plan. Instead of just saying, look, we'll sell you exactly what you want. Here's the price, and maybe it's actually higher than this. But stop trying to sell us all these things that we don't need.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with that too, and I don't have the Comcast phone service, and probably never will, but it doesn't stop them from trying to get me to do it every month or two. So yeah, it is annoying. I think it's a separate issue from cutting the cord, but yeah, it's just another one of those annoying issues. Exactly. Yeah, and I think people. I think the on-demand thing has definitely caught on. There was a time. You got me thinking. There was a time way back when I was a kid, when fire was getting invented, that when a movie came out, it showed in the movie theater. It was scheduled to show maybe a week, and then if it was very popular, there'd be this big sign that says "held over for an additional week," and it would be there for 2 weeks, and then it would leave, and that would be it. If you wanted to see that movie for the rest of your life, too bad. If you were lucky, there might be some sort of film festival somewhere that would get copies of older movies and show them again. But otherwise, you were pretty much out of luck. And then, of course, VCRs came along, and television came along. I guess television was the first thing. Television came along, and suddenly there was the option to watch movies again on television, but you still didn't have total control over what you watched. It was nice. Gone with the Wind might be on, and you get to watch it if you'd never seen it before. But if you didn't happen to be home that night, too bad. And then VCRs came along, and suddenly you could watch what you wanted whenever you wanted. And every movie ever made was suddenly something you could watch whenever you wanted to rent the video. And it's just a totally different experience, and we never looked back. And I think the same thing is now happening to TV programs, where The idea that you're tied to watching a TV program to when the broadcaster shows it is totally over. Even if you have Comcast and nothing else, you have Comcast On Demand, which allows you to see most recent programs anyway, stuff in the last few months, without having to do anything else. So you just go to the Comcast On Demand section and pick what you want.
I realize we're retreading some old topics here, but it's still it fascinates me. Now, one of the things we saw at CES was, and maybe they were there before, I just hadn't seen one, an over-the-air DVR, so that if you have an over-the-air antenna, you plug this in and you've got the ability to record over-the-air channels just like you would with your TiVo or whatever DVR you have. And so that, there's just another way that somebody looked and said, hey, this is what people want. They want it on their terms. We're going to help them do it. So
that's interesting. Excuse me. I wasn't aware of that at CES. Of course, I wasn't at CES. You were. And I'd be interested in getting the details on that from you. I know that the Aero service that sort of went bankrupt or had to close its doors because of the court ruling, that there was talk that it was going to try to resurrect itself as in the cloud DVR service, and that the networks were trying to prevent that. But I think that's another great idea whose time has long since been overdue. I mean, one of the complaints I have about having a DVR, I have a Comcast DVR, actually I have a TiVo and a Comcast DVR in different locations, but let's just say the Comcast DVR is, number one, it's limited. When you run out of hard drive space, you're done. And when you're recording HD video, if you want to save things, you pretty quickly can run out of hard drive space. And so it encourages you not to save things. I used to have a VHS video library of hundreds of movies. You can't do that with the DVR. And the second thing is, if the DVR ever breaks, or as is the case with Comcast, if they come out with a new and supposedly improved service that requires that you get a new and supposedly improved DVR and you have to trade your old one in, you lose everything that you've saved, even if you could save it. And so the idea of being able to record things to the cloud, where you could potentially permanently save an unlimited amount of shows, and even better, be able to watch them wherever you happen to be, so that if you're over at your friend's house, you could potentially watch it at your friend's house by connecting to your cloud service from there. That would be really cool, and I think something like that should be very popular if it can pass the legal hassles.
Yeah, it is interesting to watch. It just seems like they just constantly seem to they either are missing it, or they just are fighting it every single step of the way. And I understand there are a lot of issues here, folks. There are a lot of issues with what you should record, how long you should be able to keep it. If it's broadcast over the air and you're retaining it for personal use, that's great. If you're archiving it, if you're sharing it, maybe not so much. So there are a lot of things to be worked out. But at the end of the day, I still believe that there's a lot of money to be made by giving people what they want.
Yeah, in that regard, there was an article I read the other day that said if you were lucky enough to be able to get the 4K content from Netflix, which I think is still in very limited release at this point, that you might find that you're unable to play it in 4K quality to your TV, to your computer monitor, even though you're connecting to Netflix over your computer. And it turned out that the reason was the sort of built-in, I don't remember all the details, I may have some part of this wrong, but essentially the final message was that the copyright protection, the sort of HDMI copyright protection that makes sure that you can't go to a device where you could be recording this. The same thing happened when HDMI, when high definition monitors for computers first came out. And if they were connected through HDMI connections, you got this thing sometimes that this wasn't a device that you were allowed to use to show this sort of movie. And the same thing is happening now with 4K. And the whole basis of it is to prevent piracy. And again, the movie companies' drive to prevent piracy is screwing the consumer, as far as I'm concerned. All the legitimate users who want to watch this stuff can't watch it on their setup. They'll have to get some other kind of setup, apparently. And I've had the same problem with my Comcast DVR in different ways for just ordinary HD content. So yeah, it's just the companies just put the movie companies in particular, cable companies sometimes just put these impediments in place to protect themselves in various ways, and I think it works in the sense that they aren't really hurting financially. There just isn't enough protest about it. People put up with it, and so they get away with it.
Well, people put up with it, but you also have, I mean, look, I understand. If somebody were stealing content from me that I was expecting to be paid for, I'd be upset about it too. Mm. I'd like to think that I would sit down and do some analysis. And look, maybe they have. I want to be fair to them. Maybe they have done the analysis and it's worth it to alienate X number of customers to prevent Y number of piracies. So, you know, they may have done the analysis and it still works out. But I sometimes think that if you let it go free, price it fairly. I don't want to jump through a bunch of hoops to pirate something that, you know, I'm happy to pay for it if you give it to me at a reasonable price the way I want it.
And it doesn't seem to succeed. I mean, you can still get pirated copies of this stuff, so it doesn't really block that. My contention, I guess, is, if I wasn't being clear, is that these protections, quote unquote, wind up blocking legitimate consumers more than the potential pirates. And so, yeah, if it was true that what they put in place, say 98% blocked piracy with minimal inconvenience for the consumer, great, I'm all for that. I don't want to encourage piracy, but I think it's actually the reverse. I think it has very little effect on piracy. It certainly has very little effect on the professional piracy. Yes, maybe it prevents casual user Joe from doing it in his home just to see if he can make a copy of the movie. But if casual user Joe wants to go down to the sidewalk in New York City and get a bootleg copy of the latest movie that some guy's selling there because he's a professional pirate, he can still do that, no sweat. And so it really isn't blocking the piracy, and it's just making life more inconvenient for the user. But yes, like you said, we've gone through this before, so let's not belabor it much longer. It's something that we both agree on, and probably most of our listeners agree as well.
Yeah. And if you don't, folks, let us know. Or if you do, let us know. We like affirmation.
Yeah.
This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by lynda.com, the unparalleled online video training library. I don't know about you, but I'm not really into New Year's resolutions. If I need to do something different, make a change in my life, or start down a new path, I don't want to wait until some arbitrary date on the calendar. At the same time, it isn't bad to have a little reflection, clean out your things to-do list, and reorder your priorities. And making lynda.com part of that process is a great way to open up new avenues and ideas going into 2015. With lynda.com, you get over 3,000 courses on just about any topic you can think of. Audio, video, design, business. You could start out 2015 interested in a given topic, and by May, be able to claim competence at your office or on your resume. Like photography. Learn how to take better photos, then learn how to do more with them in Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop Elements, or Aperture. Or 3D and animation. Start with the basics, then learn creating textures and shapes, then put them all into motion. The list goes on and on. Learn because you want to, or learn because you need to. There's no better way to learn than by watching, and watching experts do their thing. Experts that you've heard and seen on MacVoices. Experts like Rich Harrington, Tom Negrino, and Deke McClelland. And when you're watching these experts, you're watching high-quality, professionally recorded video and audio, not something done in the basement by someone who starts the show off with, yo. I've used lynda.com courses to keep up to date on WordPress, the software that keeps the MacVoices site running, to improve my understanding of graphics, and more. And I have trouble keeping up with all the great new courses that lynda.com adds every week. Join me and the millions of people all over the world who use lynda.com to up their game for personal or business benefit. But don't take my word for it. Find out for yourself by going right now to lynda.com/MacVoices to get a free 10-day trial of lynda.com. And I need to be clear on this. This is 10 full days of access to everything lynda.com has to offer. No courses held back, no limited time on each course. Watch for an hour, or watch as much as you can pack into those 10 days. At the end, I think you'll understand the depth and breadth of the lynda.com library and the difference it can make for you. Get started right now and make yourself better in 2015 with the 10-day free trial available at lynda.com/MacVoices. And let me know what courses you pick for your free trial at chuck@macvoices.com. I might want to take them right along with you. lynda.com/MacVoices, and you've got 10 days of training on whatever you want, free. What a great way to start off the new year. Thanks to lynda.com for their support of MacVoices. Okay, so sort of going in the CES direction.
Mm-hmm.
What would it take me to sell you a new TV?
Wow. Well, I just got a new TV last year, and it was one of the Panasonic plasmas. I think we've talked about that before, that they don't make anymore. And I wish I'd gotten a larger one. If I knew they were going to not make them anymore, I would have spent the extra money for a larger one. But be that aside from that, I'm perfectly happy with what I have. The only way I would get a new TV at this point was if I was convinced that a 4K TV, number one, had been perfected to the point that it was as good as a plasma, which most seem not to be there yet, so that I wouldn't be sacrificing any picture quality to shift to a 4K TV, which are basically, as I understand, still LCD, LED type TVs underneath all that high-density pixel count. And the second thing is that there'd be a reasonable amount of content that I could watch for 4K that would make it worth having. If those two things came together, then and the price was cheap enough, if those three things came together, then I'd get a new 4K TV. Until then, no.
I ask just because I didn't spend a lot of time in the TV area, but I watched the announcements come out. And the big thing this year, obviously 4K, that's been around for a while. Some of them are pushing up 8K, ultra high density things. There are a lot of different buzzwords going on. Last year, of course, we were seeing so much 3D. This year, we're seeing the curved stuff. And it really is interesting to watch the television industry try to sell us things when we have a TV that, like you say, you've got a plasma that you really like. I've got an LED that I really like. How much better do I need the picture? I mean, sure, yes. If you gave me a 4K TV and you could promise me the content, that might sway me. But I'm struggling still with a little bit with just how they have to do something. I know to sell new TVs, but I'm just not sure that they're doing anything useful at this point.
Well, they tripped over a gold mine a decade or so ago with flat screen HD TVs. When those first came out, and digital TVs in general, and the thin flat screens and the 1080 definition, K definition, when all that came together, everyone in the country that could afford it, and pretty much now everyone in the country, even if you can't afford it, wanted to get a new TV, and pretty much did. And so they saw a complete turnover of the TV market in probably less than 10 years. And so I think part of what's going on is they said, well, what can we do to duplicate that? How can we make that happen again? Well, good luck. It isn't going to happen again every time you want it to. I mean, major changes like that happen, if you're lucky, once in a generation. And you certainly can't manufacture it by curving the screen or offering 3D. That isn't going to do it.
Yeah. Although I must say, this year we saw a lot of curved screen computer monitors. I think I'm buying into that a lot more than I would the TV, because the TV, there's one seat for one sweet spot, and it's an interesting effect, and it's certainly not unpleasant if you're going to sit alone in your living room and you're going to be the only one watching it. The computer monitor is a little bit different thing because you're always sitting in that sweet spot, and so that and not just necessarily for gaming, but for kind of everything. That I bought a little more. Then I finally did get to go to an Apple store and see the 5K iMac, and wow,
Yeah, I looked at the 5K iMac, and there was a setup. I was in Best Buy, actually, where it had a 5K and a standard iMac right next to each other. And what I discovered is pretty much what I expected, which was if I was staying at some distance, it was virtually impossible to say which one was which. Like if you looked at that Yosemite photograph, that's the sort of desktop picture for the standard Macs in the stores. I couldn't tell which one was which from a distance. When I got close, I could see that some of the smaller objects in the picture were much better defined on the 5K iMac than the standard iMac. So the small detail stood out. But the biggest difference, which is what I expected, was with text. And again, if you're working with text, the 5K iMac, from the menu bar text all the way to word processing document text to any place where there's text, the 5K iMac, it's almost impossible to tell that you're looking at pixelated text. It looks like somebody wrote it with a pen. Whereas with the standard Mac, in fact, the standard Mac looks wonderful until you've stared at the iMac for a while, and then you go back and you say, what the hell? How did I ever tolerate that? That's where you'll see the biggest difference. And of course, people work with text all the time, so it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess the lesson is, unless you're serious about buying one, don't go and look at it, because once you do, you're going to want one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Ted, from your perspective, did you see any announcements or anything come out of CES that was intriguing to you? I mean, I was there with my nose up against the glass. Mm-hmm. You had a little better perspective on it. Anything that caught your eye?
I read a couple of articles on the best things to come out of CES, and that Sling TV caught my attention, like we were talking about before, and really very little else. In fact, before the show started, we said we might turn the tables around. So I was so unenthused with the little bit that I saw at CES. I said, well, maybe someone who's actually been there could capture what was really good better. So why don't I turn the table around to you and say, what were the 2 or 3 best things that you saw while you were at CES?
I'm not sure I can say that I saw 2 or 3 best things, because I think that implies that they're applicable to a lot of people. I saw a lot of individual products that I thought were cool, that they either solve a problem, they make something a little easier, or maybe give me a capability I didn't have before that is really useful. And I don't want to cut up anybody's products here. So, but I think the poster child for the excess of the Internet of Things, the connectivity, is the Bluetooth toothbrush. I mean, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, maybe I just didn't get it, but I think that I just don't see it. I don't see it. On the other hand, I did an interview with a company from, please don't, sorry if I get this wrong, but I think it's Denmark, who did a connected set of hearing aids. And what they've done with that is fascinating and really useful. I've had family members who have had hearing aids, and I know I'm familiar a little bit with some of the issues that can be present when you're using them. And I got to tell you, these guys really have it nailed. Obviously, I didn't have a chance to test them and don't have the need for them, at least at this point. But wow, it was a real. Put the Internet toothbrush on one side, or the Bluetooth toothbrush on one side, and the hearing aids on the other side, and it's like the two ends of the spectrum where you don't quite see the value this adds, and you see a huge amount of value this adds. Mm. The connectivity thing. I mean, they're just you can connect your doorbell. You have a video doorbells, garage door openers. I mean, everything has an iOS app now. And the question really becomes, I think, how well have the designers thought through it, and what value are they adding to the product? Sometimes it's just the fact that you can play with something on your iPhone, and sometimes it's honest to God, real function and real value.
In that regard, by the way, I ordered a Ring doorbell. The Ring is one of the companies that make these iPhone app doorbells.
Okay.
It's a second generation. That's supposedly a lot better than the first generation, and it should be arriving any day, actually. And I got it primarily because Naomi wanted something like that. She wanted to be able to see who was at the front door, and we have this little peephole in our front door, which she says when she looks there, she can never tell who it is anyway because it's such a piece of crap. And so I said, well, let me look into this. And so I'm not sure it's going to work. Maybe we'll talk more about it after I have it, but I already have some questions in my mind about how practical it's going to turn out to be and whether we'll really like it or not. But I thought it was worth a try. So next time we do a podcast, maybe I'll be able to report back on it.
Good. Yeah, that's it, Ted. You know, one thing I did observe of so many of the companies I talked to, they're developing for the iPhone, iPad, iOS first. Android is there. Android is coming. Android at best might be parallel. I think I might have run into one company that had something that was Android first. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't necessarily doing anything selectively here, just searching out Apple products. So the good news is that I think we can look forward to having connectivity, you know, for our stuff, at least first, and certainly on par with anything else.
And that makes a sense to me. I think what people still find, it always could change in the future, but people still find is that even if Android devices are selling in greater numbers, Apple iPhone users are using their devices in multiple ways, much more than the Android users are. And so if you're expecting somebody to download an app and use the app to get your device to work, you're more likely to be successful appealing to iPhone users than Android users. That's what I think statistics have shown. Certainly statistics have shown that the web browsers on iOS devices get used a lot more than the web browsers on Android devices, for example. And I think it extends to other things as well.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is a real shift or maybe we've already made it, but it's something that I thought a lot about for doing the shows and having our discussions and all, that as much as we tend to think at times in an Apple-centric universe, the universe is out there and it's connecting to us through our devices. And so while you won't find a lot of Mac or Apple specific things coming out of my CES coverage, you'll find plenty of things, almost everything that has a relationship to an Apple device. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and hey, that may be a good thing. You know, in fact, I think it is. I think it's opening us up, and we have a bigger, better choice of products that are likely to be actually useful to us instead of just a little gadget you pick up to play with.
Yeah. Everything is getting interconnected through your iOS device or Android device these days. That seems to be the hallmark, and probably one of the biggest things going on at CES, from what I understood. Actually, speaking of that, also, I know that this year the term iLounge was eliminated from the iOS/Mac section of the CES. What was going on there? What is there something political going on there that we might want to know about? How was this section of CES this year compared to previous years and so on?
I can't comment on the politics because I don't know. I think there was something that was, you know, partially sponsored by iLounge. A couple big things that happened. You're right. There was not necessarily, as I understood it, a dedicated iLounge area. The second thing was that in prior years, Dr. Bot had a significant presence, and then had a lot of their of the people that made products that they distributed have very small booths within their area. Of course, Dr. Bot is no more, so everything sort of spread out into what they were calling the iProducts area. And, you know, inevitably, there were a lot of cases, you know, most of which could be overlooked very easily. You know, you have the inevitable, you can drop it from, you know, the Empire State Building and it'll protect your iPhone. I think I only did one or two case interviews because they were something that either I was really interested in or really thought it was outstanding. You know, the rest was just, again, we're talking about niche products. If you want a certain kind of speaker to do a certain kind of thing, then you're going to find it. You know, somebody's making it. It's just a matter then of is it the only one or is there a better one? But yeah, it was a strange show. It just felt, I think Dave Hamilton said it real well. It was an iterative kind of show. There wasn't a quantum leap anywhere that I saw, and I think that anybody has seen. But there were a lot of interesting little products along the way, and that's what you're going to find in what I did at MacVoices. or at CES, excuse me, on MacVoices, just talking to those people. A lot of really enthusiastic people, that want to do new products, and some of them are Me Too products, and some of them are genuinely something a little bit different.
Cool.
So
all right.
You should come next year.
I've thought about it. Every year I think about it, actually, and then I don't go every year. but maybe I do like Las Vegas, as we've talked about before. Whenever I go to Las Vegas, I have fun. So the CS just becomes an excuse to go to Las Vegas, and I spend all my time at the blackjack table. But maybe I'll come next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you stop by and pick me up on the way that you're going, then I'll go for sure.
I can try to arrange a ride for you. Pennsylvania to San Francisco to Vegas. I guess I could make it work.
Yeah.
I can make it work. Yeah. But I will tell you one quick story.
Okay.
Got there late. I think it was Friday night. I got there, and of course, coming from the East Coast, it's very late my time. It's like 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock. I'm in the elevator in the hotel, going up to my room. This guy gets on. He's a bit younger than I am, and hey, how's having a good night? And he said, "Oh, my night's just starting." Oh, good. Well, good for you, man, because I'm half asleep. And I said, "Oh, you here for CES?" And he had I believe it was an Australian accent. And oh no, mate, I'm here for the beer pong tournament. Wait a minute. It's 3:30 in the morning my time. Did you just say beer pong tournament? The World Championship of Beer Pong was in the hotel.
Wow.
I didn't even know this was a thing. And people walking around with team shirts on, and ESPN was there, recording the action. Just so.
Yeah, it reminds me of when Macworld Expo was in New York City. It's so different from when it was in San Francisco or Boston, because it was like nobody really noticed that it was in New York City, because there were just so many other things going on at the same time, and that the fact that it was New York City was just one of many little and big things that were going on constantly. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a lot of fun, watching the beer pong guys do their warm ups and enjoy their team spirits and everything. So,
I have to say, in my entire life, I've never played beer pong. So,
neither have I, because I'm not a beer drinker. But they apparently $50,000 first prize. You better practice up, Dad.
Yeah. No, I'm going to be the second person to scale the face at El Capitan in Yosemite.
Good. When does this happen?
I'm not sure. I'm working on it. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
It'll probably be several years. I'm going to have to get in shape and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, we'll check in with you every so often and see how it's going.
That's right.
So, hey, it's good to see you. Thanks so much. We're back in the groove here, and we'll keep it going.
Okay. And sorry that I'm in darkness here, but it seems to be the nature of the lighting of my room. There's nothing I can do about it.
As they say, I'll fix it in post.
Okay. I'll look like a different person, probably. Yeah. It'll be Clive Owen that you're interviewing.
Yeah. Take care, Ted. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Folks, we hope you'll continue to join us here on MacVoices. Ted will be back. I'll be back. And our usual great list of great guests will be back too. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the MacVoices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free MacVoices magazine on Flipboard by visiting MacVoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.